Well, welcome back to our next episode of A Founder's Journey. This was brought to you again as part of the Take Founder Circle, and I'm so excited about my next guest. He's the CEO of MyHive. It's Dano Ybarra. So, Dana, please let's get right into it. Tell me a little more about what got you to be a founder to begin with.
Well, Michael, it's a real pleasure to be here. Thank you very much. I want to start actually with my name. A lot of people struggle with my name. So it's Dano, and that's actually my given name. It has some historical value to my parents and grandparents. And my last name is Ybarra, which can also be pronounced Ybarra. My grandparents are from Spain. So it's great, but I was born here, grew up here, raised here, love living here. And when I say here, I actually grew up in Oregon. It's interesting, when I was in junior high school, we had a mascot who was a green giant. And I wanted to build the big green giant that went up on the gymnasium wall, but someone else beat me to it. And I thought, well, let's do something else. And so I went down to the grocery store and bought a can of green giant peas. I took that design of that green giant and I made it bigger and I created a silk screen, and I silk screened it onto a t-shirt and started wearing that around. Well, everyone wanted one. And people were handing me money in the hallways and going crazy. And I couldn't remember who gave me money. And so I just went out and bought some t-shirts and did some silk screening. And then as people say, hey, have you done that yet? I hand them a t-shirt. A real bad way to start a business, but it was fun. I just somehow energized me about, wow, I can do things and I can make money. And so that was probably my first real entrepreneur venture. Since then, I've done a lot of different things. From there, my brother and I did start a furniture business. You can see furniture behind me, handcrafted by me, my desk and other things around the house. But that was fun, as kind of figuring out, how do you really start a business? How do you do a business? From there, though, I went ahead and finished college. I have a degree in computer science, and then jumped out into just the working world, which was amazing for me. I grew up, we were relatively poor growing up, so never really had much money. But once I got out into the working world and found out, hey, I can make money. This is great. Life's really good. And so it was years before I actually did my next startup. But I had a great journey. I worked at Adobe, which was amazing. I worked at a printer company, and I was innovative within those companies and was able to create new things. And then got to work for Steve Jobs on a brief engagement. He asked me to reinvent his channels when he went back to Apple. So I had the opportunity to go figure out what to do, and made the recommendation to create the Apple stores. And of course, Steve loved it. So that was fun. But then I went and started a real startup. I didn't start it. There were like 8 engineers who had been working on this for a while, and they had a product, and one of their investors was selling a few of them, and they needed someone to really turn on the sales and marketing. So they brought me in as a co-founder, as the first sales, marketing, everything else kind of guy. And that was an exciting journey. We, 1 year, just over a year after I joined, we actually sold the company for over $1 billion.
Oh,
yeah. So
that's not bad.
In that 1 year period, I wrote a book, Guiding Your Raft, 17 Lessons in Leadership to Safely Guide Your Business Through Calm and Tumultuous Waters. Wow. A lot of the content in that book comes from my stories of that startup, that literally 12 months. And of course, we eventually were bought by Siemens. We were bought by one company, and then a year later by Siemens. And I ended up running a global division of Siemens. But the excitement was in building that business. And oh, what a great training ground, lessons learned, downs, lows, highs, excitement. I mean, it had everything all compressed into
1 year.
about 1 year.
Hey, you know what? Let's, if you don't mind, to start for a second, to tell us what one of your biggest setbacks that happened in that year of time. What was one of the ones like, oh my goodness, I can't believe this is happening?
Oh gosh, we had several of them, but let me think. Probably one of the craziest times was I joined in September, went out on the road with a product that we thought was the product. And it was an ISDN router. Now, you've heard of routers because everyone has routers today. No one did back then, unless you were a corporation and spent, $4,000 or $5,000 for a router. The ISDN part was the confusing part. I took the product out. I got it reviewed. We were top ranked in reviews. We had press write-ups. I went out and got it in front of all the major ISPs of the time. And everyone said, Dano, you do have the best router out here for ISDN. The problem is you have 30 competitors and we already have our top 3 products, and the cost of change is just too much. So we're going to stay with what we have. So after about 6 weeks on the road, I came back and sat on with Chuck, the amazing guy. I love Chuck. He was the CEO. We sat down. I said, Chuck, good news and bad news. The good news is we have the best product on the market. The bad news, no one's going to buy it. So what are we going to do? And we just looked at each other for a few minutes. And, I said, sure, I can get small sales here and there, but it's just not going to happen on the big scale we need. And I said, but you are playing with something else in the back room. And why don't you show me what that is? Maybe there's some gold there. So he said, okay, took me back in their lab and showed me what DSL was. And he said, the great thing is that this router we designed, the motherboard's the same, all the circuitry is the same. All we do is change the interface chip from ISDN to DSL. I said, really? Well, let's go do DSL. He goes, Dano, no one's deploying DSL today. There is none, nowhere. I said, but Chuck, if we look forward and we'll keep grinding away at ISDN, but let's go get our DSL router in front of everyone who will deploy it. So I spent the next couple months traveling the globe, literally, getting it placed in all the labs of all the big telcos. And and everyone said the same, oh yeah, we're going to deploy in a couple months. We're going to deploy in a couple months. I call them the next month. Yeah, in a couple months, we're going to deploy. And it just kept, kicking the can down the road. Well, Christmas, we all went home and took the week after Christmas off, just to decompress and everything. But we were also out of money. And we came back to work the first working day of January. We kind of all just came back because we didn't know what else to do. And we sat down and we started working. And we knew that there was no paycheck. And we were just sitting there. And pretty soon I get a call from what then was really big new thing was called a CLEC. They're basically a smaller telco called COVAD, not to be confused with COVID. COVAD. They gave me a call and said, hey, Dano, we're going to start deploying DSL. I said, fabulous. When are you going to start? They go, tomorrow. I go, tomorrow? They go, yeah. So later today, you'll get a fax from us with an order for 1,000 units. I said, okay, great. When do you need the units? They go, well, tomorrow. And we're just sitting there. So I go, great, thank you. So I run into Chuck's office. I go, great news, Chuck, and bad news. The great news is we got an order coming in for 1,000 units. The bad news is we don't have any. And he goes, yeah, I know. I said, let's go figure out how many we do have and how many we can get built by tomorrow. So we did. We scrounged around and we said, okay, we can probably get 3 built by tomorrow.
3.
3. So I called COVAD and I say, hey, when you're starting your deployments tomorrow, where are they? And I was living in the Bay Area in San Jose, and they were also in San Jose. And they're just, so we have actually only one install tomorrow and it's local. I said, fabulous. Why don't you have your truck stop by our place tomorrow morning and we'll give them 2 routers in case there's a problem with one, and they can go do their install. I said, what does the day after tomorrow look like? He goes, yeah, we have 2 scheduled then. I go, fabulous. Well, let's just stay in touch and just have your trucks come by and pick them up as they need them here in the first couple of weeks. And he goes, okay, we can do that. And I'm going, whoa. I couldn't believe he said yes. So we spent all night building and testing routers. And we did this for almost a month as the volume grew, until we could finally get a manufacturer set up to do it for us. My job in the middle of the night was to hot glue the cables into the connectors because our wires were just a little too short, and we were afraid when it would heat up, it'd be fine, but when it'd cool back down, it'd pull the wires out of the connectors. So anyway, it was amazing. The cool thing is a week later, AT&T, back then it was Pac Bell, that was part of what became AT&T. They called me, same story. We're deploying tomorrow. We need 10,000 units. And I had the same response. Well, where are you deploying? They go, well, we just have one in San Francisco tomorrow. I said, great, have your truck stop by. And they went for it. And so that's how we kicked off. And,
wow.
So in those little moments, there were setbacks, but we've just found a way around it, I guess, is the best way to put it.
Wow. So now, of course, fast forward, you sold that business, and now let's talk about MyHive a little bit.
Yeah. Oh, we're so excited. Not too different than the story of my first real big startup. I had someone say, hey, I know this guy, he's a developer and he's kind of put together this really cool product. You might want to take a look at it. So I did. And I said, whoa, this is really cool. This really is timely too, because as people are now coming out of the pandemic and kind of looking at their long-term plans, it's a perfect time to bring something like this to market. And I said, how would you like it if I built a team around you? We'll be co-founders, we'll make all this happen. And he said, yeah, that would be fabulous. So I grabbed a couple guys that I've worked with in the past where we've had great successes. We put the company together. So we've been on this project for about 1.5 years, but we formed the company in June of 2021. I was going to say June of this year, but now we're in the next year. So we've officially been formed for about 6-7 months. And what we do is we create a virtual office. So whereas people used to come together in the office and that's where they rub shoulders in the hallways, they had the water cooler conversations, they had just those spontaneous, unscheduled things that would happen. And to talk about, well, now that, over 80% of the businesses who went remote are going to stay remote, they need a way to bring the company back together, but virtually. And, Zoom, Teams, Slack saved our businesses. The thing about them, though, is with Zoom and video conferencing, it's all scheduled. There's no spontaneity there because they're scheduled, right? Slack is great because you do have those, spontaneous conversations. The problem is when we communicate, only 20% of our communication is conveyed with the actual words we use. So that can be written, it can be spoken, but the words are only 20%. So over Slack, and other chat type communication forums, a lot of people use WhatsApp outside the US, you're only getting 20% of the meaning. 40% comes from our voice, our intonations, our pauses, our inflections. And then another 40% comes from our visual, the body language, right? So until you put it all together and are able to do it spontaneously, we're missing out. Now, Microsoft, Intel, and Google all did extensive research on their own employees during the pandemic, and they concluded that, the three biggest challenges, and we believe they're also the three biggest challenges of everyone going remote, is number one, individual isolation creates mental health issues, depression, feeling of loneliness, feeling of working on an island by yourself, and has created silos. Yes, individual productivity is up, but all of those personal challenges result in less teamwork, less teaming. And in fact, they all found that innovation was way down, creativity was way down, because there's so many individual silos. In addition to that, people tended to only talk to people they already knew well. Whereas before, the amount of time you spent speaking and interacting with people you didn't know as well was up in the 70 percentile. Now it's down into 20 to 30 percentile. So all of that adds up into less creativity, less innovation, and we needed a way to bring everyone back together. And that's why we created MyHive. It's a virtual office. You see your colleagues working side by side. You can see if they're on the phone. You can see if they're chatting. And I tell you, I love it because I open up my office every morning and I see people around working, and it just energizes me and it gets me excited. So as a user, it's actually helped invigorate and keep me motivated on mornings when I just didn't feel like doing much. And then I see everyone working and I just get excited, and then I'll jump into someone's office and say, hey, quick question on that customer, or quick question on that finance, or, and all these spontaneous conversations now happen again. So that's what we're up to at MyHive.
Gotcha. Wow. That's so cool. So tell me what's, it's over the last year and a half, and I was, what's been the biggest lesson learned from as being part of this one?
And you would think after having started several companies in my career and been through the process many times, I would not make this mistake again, but I make it every time. And that is, I try and take shortcuts. In other words, hey, I believe there's a big market out there. Let's just go build the product and start selling, right? I skip all those fundamental steps. And with MyHive, I did skip one fundamental step. And so which is really understanding the monetizable pain that customers have. Now, we were lucky that we were probably 70% right, but as now we have actual customers and I'm interacting with them and talking with them as frequently as they'll let me, it's like, Dano, you're being a pest. Okay, I'll leave you alone for a while. But trying to understand what their real pains are to make sure that we adjust the features and the solutions that we're designing to address those first and foremost. Everything else is nice icing, good to have, fun to have, nice to have. But if you're not hitting those core monetizable pains, then you could have the coolest product on the planet, but you won't sell any. So of course, we made that mistake again. We jumped out thinking we knew best, and we did miss on a few. Fortunately, we were lucky and hit some of the key pain points.
Good deal. Well, so tell me then, in this series, because you've written a book, so you might read that. But I was going to say, if there's been a book that's made a difference in your life, what would it be and why? If there's a book that you say, hey, people should read. What would that be?
Well, I'll start with my own book because it actually really helped me, one, remember lessons that I've learned. My brother, who's worked with me at many, many companies that I've done, including my startups, he helped remind me of things that we learned, which enhanced my book. So writing my own book, whether you're writing a journal or writing a book or whatever, writing blogs about your lessons learned, that has been very meaningful. But as far as books I've read that have had the biggest impact, there's so many very, very good books. But as an entrepreneur, I could not recommend Nail It, Then Scale It more than any other book. Paul Ahlstrom, who's a local Utah guy, he hooked up with another gentleman named Nathan Furr, and they wrote a really solid book on, hey, you're going to do a startup, start here, then move here, then move here, then move here. And he's just really nailed all the key principles. And I'm actually reading it again right now because I'm working with some BYU students who are doing some research for me. And I'm using that as my model of how we're going to work through all of this. But yeah, amazing book. Nail it, then scale it.
Okay. Well, that sounds like a great book. I think I haven't read that one yet, so I'm gonna order that one today.
Perfect.
Well, it's been such a pleasure. Hey, Dan, so tell me, Dano, if someone wants to get a hold of you, how are they get a hold of you? If they want to learn more about your business, I mean, MyHive or you, how would they do that?
Well, two places you can go. If you want to learn a little more about me and get links to everything else that I'm involved in, my book, the startup, and other things, you can go to my website, which is danoybarra.com, DANOYBARRA.com. And there you'll find out a little bit about me. I have to say I blush every time someone does go there because I'm not very good about talking about things about myself. But I had someone get with me and help extract all that and create that site for me. But that's where you can learn a little about me. About my business, myhive.global. So you just go to www.myhive.global and it'll take you to our website. There's a nice video where you can see the product, see how it works. And of course, all the information. There's a 10-day free trial. So if you just want to try it out, hey, feel free.
Okay. Wow. Well, that sounds great. I really appreciate, it's been fascinating. You've had some great stories, especially you're talking about, that router. That's unbelievable. That had some crazy times. So,
oh my goodness. It's like living a lifetime in a moment, right?
That's right. Well, thanks a lot. And look forward to seeing you again at another Tech Founders Circle event. Okay.
Absolutely, Michael. Thank you so much.